Welcome to the CBS Eye on Money podcast. It is Tuesday, July 6th. Long weekend. It's all over. And you know what I did as part of my long weekend? I went on CBS This Morning to discuss the Labor Department's most recent jobs report. And we're going to digest what exactly that report meant and what we can expect in the future. More on that jobs report after this.
Okay, here to talk about the jobs and numbers and the ongoing recovery is CBS News senior business analyst Jill Schlesinger, who is back in studio for the first time since March 2020. Good to see you, Jill. Let's start with this. So more jobs than expected, but unemployment went up. What gives?
Well, these are two different surveys. One is a survey that goes out to employers, and it says, did you hire more people? Yes, 850,000 more. The other goes to households, and the household survey says, hey, are you employed? Are you actively looking for a job? And if you're not actively looking, you're not counted as part of the labor force. And that can mean that the unemployment rate moves up and down. Again, 0.1%, not a big deal. We do have a ways to go. 3.5% was the unemployment rate before the pandemic. But we have made progress. We were over 14% last April.
Well, folks aren't going back to work. And now a government report says folks are quitting their jobs at a rate they haven't seen since 2000. What gives? And what are companies doing to keep people on their payroll?
This is like the conundrum of the labor force question. And here's the temporary aspect of it. We know people are receiving these extra benefits through the federal government, right? $300 a week. That allows them to stay on the sidelines and maybe take their time looking. We also know there are people who had childcare issues. We also know that there are people who were really worried about the virus, maybe because of what's going on in their home. But a longer term issue that's really fascinating, economists tell me, we didn't have international migration for so long. That was a source of a lot of workers. And get this, pandemic retirements soared. We saw more than 3 million people retire during the, 2 million people retire during the pandemic. That accounts for the drop in the labor force. We saw a 3.4 million drop in the labor force. 2 million is retirements. So it's a huge change.
Yeah, and so when you're a company, then what are they doing to try to keep the people that are there and then maybe recruit more even still?
Well, you know, the tech companies are always the leading edge of this. Early on, you know, the ones that you would expect, Microsoft and Apple and Google, they said, stay home, take your time.
Right.
But now there are more and more companies saying we want to adopt a hybrid model. We saw a recent poll that was really interesting. 39% of respondents said, if I can't get flexibility, I want a new job. And so more companies, we're talking about Pepsi and Verizon, even financial firms like the UBS just announced this. Citigroup said, we'll do a more flexible schedule.
But was it Morgan Stanley that said, if you can go eat dinner in New York, you're coming into the office?
Yes,
want that.
And slashing salaries.
Yeah, exactly. The CEO, James Gorman, had said that. What's interesting about it is I think these other companies are saying, here's a way that we can differentiate. If they're going to be so hardline, our competitors at Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan Chase, then why not come over here? Interesting, Citigroup is led by a female CEO. She has determined that she thinks she wants to be the place where working moms want to be. And I think a hybrid model could be the key. Just remember, a lot of people up and down the income stream, they are reconsidering their options. This pandemic has created a psychological, emotional, and family hangover. People are reconsidering their options.
But if you work on airplanes or in restaurants or in hotels, you can't do that hybrid model. You have to be there.
Yeah. That's exactly right. There are certain industries that don't lend themselves to it, but to others, you know what? Maybe there is a way, a middle ground that will be interesting.
Okay, you're back. It's CBS Eye on Money, and I am joined by my cohort here, Mark Talercio. He's the executive producer. And Mark, you know, we've heard from so many people who are thinking about changing jobs. So let's talk a little bit about this. So what do you think is motivating this? This is clearly a post-pandemic issue that people use the last 16 months to think about what their lives were like. What do you think people are considering right now?
I would think first and foremost, they're probably considering having flexibility. Working from home for the past however many months that it's been, I think a lot of people have gotten used to that. And the idea of having to get in their car and make the commute and sit in traffic is no longer very appealing. So I'm guessing that's probably the biggest factor.
Yeah, I think so too. Talk a little bit about for you how that changed. I mean, you have had a career where you were tethered to a desk. You know, Mark came from the news division at CBS, first in radio, then in television. So talk about what it felt like to break that chain and again get free. What did that mean for you in your life?
Well, first and foremost, there's no going back. That much I can tell you. I will never work in that environment again for the rest of my life. It just, it just brings a whole added level of flexibility. And, once I had a kid, that was huge, because my better half, she has a job that has very little flexibility. She's tethered to the phone, the desk, the Zoom meetings. So there's not a lot of flexibility during the day. For me, with you, we basically call our own shots. We do things when we can. If we have to do it at night, we do it at night. As long as it gets done, that's the bottom line. It doesn't really matter when we do it. So having that flexibility for me has been huge throughout this past year and a half.
Would you have guessed 5 years ago, let's say, that you would have valued flexibility more than money?
Probably not. No, I think for a while it was all about money. Even not too long ago, I had offers from CBS to go back in a full-time role at a pretty high level, probably making more money, but it would have meant being tied to a desk, being tied to the email, constantly looking at my phone, constantly being on call, maybe working weekends, maybe working holidays. Even though it was more money, the answer was very easy. That was a hard and fast no.
No, thank you. Do you think that this will be a lasting impact of the pandemic? Or do you think it's going to be one of those weird things where it's like 6 months from now, everyone's back to work and they'll be forgotten? How much of this do you think is actually going to stick?
I think dependent on the role, I think the hybrid policy is probably here to stay. But I think it depends on the role. Some roles, no, you're going to be in the office 5 days a week.
I'm really interested to see whether these big banks that have really come down pretty hard, are they going to lose people who are seeking something different? And I'm really, really intrigued to learn whether or not that happens. I really am, because I just think that, I don't know, I think that these banks are underestimating that people truly are just fried from this whole process and they want something different and something really cool. Like something is, it is kind of neat to consider that this is a new way that we've learned that we can work, right? I mean, I don't think that part of it is going to return to what it once was. And I also think what you said, so many people in the United States get in their cars and sit in traffic. So many people have to sit on trains. And it's like you're burning up time. Now, listen, many people, of course, some of them happen to be friends of mine, are like, oh, I miss my commute. It's like my alone time.
Yeah. Let's see if they say that after 3 months of commuting.
Right. Exactly. It's a funny thing. Okay. So last question for you about this whole new work environment. What about paying people in days off? Like I just read that Fidelity and LinkedIn are providing relief days off, like just adding in time, like just take time off. If you think about it, this is crazy. Back in March, 40% of Americans said they felt burned out while working at home this past year. I wonder, could extra days off help and relieve some of that anxiety?
You mean like it's only a 4-day work week and you're off 3 days? Or do you have like floating personal days?
Maybe a floating personal day is what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, I mean, certainly that'll help, but people got to use them. It's like even with vacations, so many employees don't use all of their vacation every year. It's nuts.
That's so true. And I think that's such a weird American thing. Remember when we were in Europe and it was like, oh, it's so great. A friend of mine just took a job with a French company. Okay. First of all, she's coming out of the news business where, again, tethered to the desk. The company says, we require you to take 6 weeks off a year. We require, we know what they do? They shut off your email access.
That is totally European.
Right? And she said, what happens if you need me? They said, well, we'll call you if we need you, but we don't do that. We don't do that.
That's a concept that is completely foreign here.
I'm better during holiday, but it is very hard for me to disconnect. It's very hard. I'm going to try. In fact, as I speak to you right here, my CBS Eye on Money family, I'm disconnected because we're pre-taping this because I'm on vacation this week. Let's see if I hold to it, Mark.
I think you will.
You do? You have a good feeling?
Yeah, you've gotten much better about that in the last couple of years.
You know why? Because it doesn't really matter. Whatever you think, you're not that important.
The world will survive.
Absolutely. All right. That's your June jobs report analysis and convo. So if you've got a question about your career, don't forget, give us a holler. Our email address is askjill@jillonmoney.com. Ask Jill at jillonmoney.com. If you're on our website, which is called jillonmoney.com. You see the coincidence there? It's fantastic. If you're on our website, you can hit the contact button. Please do sign up for our free weekly newsletter. And you can follow us, the Eye on Money podcast. You can follow us on Apple or wherever else you get your favorite podcasts. We drop episodes Tuesdays and Thursdays, so we don't want you to miss a minute of us. We also have a sister broadcast called Jill on Money, which we drop daily. And both of those are actually on our website. You can follow us directly from the jillonmoney.com website. All right. Well, listen, it's a Tuesday. It is a vacation week for many of us, including me. Still want to please remind you to do something nice for someone else today. It's just very easy because it could just be a smile. Someone just said to me recently, "You made my day because I let them play with my dogs a little bit." Curiosity, compassion, community. That's what this show is about. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you on Thursday.